Hey everybody, Barry here again. Well, ain't this a surprise? I don't know how I feel about it yet. And to like the 70% people on my poll who said don't shave the beard, I apologize. I don't know. I got clippers in my hand. I was like, gotta go. So yeah, no more beard for a little while. And maybe grow it out consistent and not just, whatever. Anyway, that's not what we're here for. So, van.
Last video, I got all of the cables done. Everything is all ran to the battery. Down here, across to the starter, grounds, alternator wire. Auxiliary is done.
Everything to the ignition is done. Well, not the ignition switch, but the starter button switch.
Which is all inside of here. Which all looks really, really good and works.
No compression on the engine because I don't have any plugs in it, but the starter button itself works. The ignition itself works. So today, I think I'm going to try fire this thing up. A lot of work in order for me to do that. So I'm just going to go and put the drive shaft, just slip the yoke back into the transmission, and I'm not necessarily ready to have all that bolted back together yet anyway. So I will just kind of slip it in there. It's in park, so nothing back there is going to be spinning. And I just want to make sure there's no oil going to be slung all over the floor.
Also, I'll just put a rubber hose, loop these hoses, fill the transmission.
Make sure all that's good. I don't have any coolant in this thing.
Like, obviously, there's nothing here.
But if I can get it running for 15 or 20 seconds, it's not going to hurt anything. And, well, at the very least, I'll see if the engine runs today. Whether it does or it doesn't, I should know. So I'm going to go bolt the drive shaft in first, get my transmission thing sorted out there, and then I'll plug in all the harness and everything, and probably do a 10-second temporary job on the wiring just to fire it up, see what it sounds like. I'm not going to run it through the gears or anything today because I don't have any coolant hoses on this thing, and I don't want it to get it too hot. But at the very least, I'll see if the engine runs and how well it runs, so that I don't go and put this whole thing back together, everything is all bolted on, and it knocks, or it just won't run, whatever. Because I haven't taken the heads off of this, so I have no idea what's in under them. And we'll find out very shortly. Well, transmission lines are done. Drive shaft is stabbed into the back of the transmission. Fluid is filled up.
I put 10 quarts in it. This was a horrible place to try to put transmission fluid in, like way under here.
And I poured half of it all over the coils and manifolds, so it's probably going to stink when I start it up. But I got 10 quarts in. It says it calls for 13 and change, but the torque converter was still full. I couldn't empty it. I didn't want to drill holes in it and stuff, so I just left that full, poured in some new fluid on top of it. And it should be pretty well full now. Full enough that it's not going to hurt anything anyway, getting to run for like 10-15 seconds. So right now, I think what I'm going to do, really there's only like one thing left to do anyway, is put the harness on. I'm hoping that it's going to go well. I'm hoping that everything is going to plug in correctly. Well, I know that much, but I hope that my PCM is going to be far enough away from the engine that I can kind of put it in here somewhere on top of the battery box, or maybe even mount it like right here, because that'd be kind of cool. Except my intercooler goes there, so tight spot. It's going to be a tight spot. I'm going to have to mount it somewhere wacky for sure. But I'm going to go and plug all that stuff in. I'll have to get under the van again to plug in the transmission, transmission plugins. I'll have to get all that done. And we'll check back in a few minutes, and hopefully in like a half an hour or so I should be able to get this running. So as far as I can tell, and as far as I can see, I'm like 5 minutes from being ready. The wiring side of it is done, although it is temporary.
Like, quite temporary. Here's my ignition switch. Because I'm not crimping all of these ends on.
Just to have it come off again in like 2 hours time. Because I don't have my PCM mounted yet. And because I don't have that mounted yet, I don't know how long of wires I'm going to need from the PCM over to the fuse block and to my ignition wire. And I'm just not ready for that yet.
So this here, you probably can't hear it, but fuel pump cuts in, you can hear fuel pump relay. Fuses are in for stuff. And here's my OBD2 wiring down here that's also fused. And my ignition hot and always hot for that. Fuel pump wire.
It's all very temporary, but it will work. I just made sure that I had fuel pressure, and I know that because one of my hoses was loose and it sprayed gas everywhere. So we have fuel pressure. So I'm gonna go put some plugs and wires in it and plug the laptop in and run a tune. And fingers crossed, hopefully it works.
It is time.
It's time for the first fire for the third time. This LS stuff is fun. It doesn't like me very much, but I love it.
All right, laptop plugged in down here. And I just have to find my tune.
All right, try to find this tune. I've already got the tune completely done for the 6-liter 4L80E. Pretty much everything else. I got my timing table done. I imagine the fuel table is going to be off like quite a bit, but yeah, it'll work. After I know that it runs and it doesn't knock or blow up immediately, then I'll pull this back apart again. It's only like 10 minutes to take the harness back off, and find somewhere to mount the PCM so that the wiring won't be too close to the manifolds, but also the PCM won't get dirty or wet from just everyday driving. So I don't think I'm going to be able to put the inner fender well on this driver's side here because the battery box is too close. Or at the very least, I'll trim out where the battery box has to be and then sort of fit the fender well down over it so that I can still put like most of it in anyway. And if the time comes that I have to take the battery box out, then I'll just buy a new inner fender liner because they're fairly cheap. Alrighty, I've got the right tune, 6-liter. I'm just going to check a few things like the injector data. Make sure I have that updated. So flow rate right here. I'm assuming you guys can see this. Okay, 70 pounds per hour, that is correct. I think everything else is pretty much exactly where I need it to be. Make sure the transmission is correct. General, it is a 4L80E. Woohoo! Right now the transmission is in park, so that's good. It's not going to move anyway. There's no drive shaft actually hooked up to the wheels, but I'm going to go load the tune now. Okay, tune is loaded. Now, just like every time you load a new tune into speed density, it has to fail the mass air, so it's not going to start up the first time and stay running. Usually it'll take 1 try, 2 tries, something like that, depending on how contrary it is at that moment. But when it does fail the mass air, it should work perfect. I'm starting to get butterflies again. I get really sick at this moment every time. I don't know if you call it anxiety or pressure, because my wife will kill me if I blow up another engine. But I said that like 4 engines ago. So Cass, I'm sorry again and again and again and again and again. So I'm going to stop stalling because I am stalling. And I'm going to go fire this thing up. Tune is loaded, so I'm going to turn on the ignition, start the log before I fire the engine up. That way I can log oil pressure and, you know, like spark or knock, whatever. I actually can't log knock because I have those disconnected, because who needs knock sensors? These engines don't knock, right? But yeah, so I mainly I want to log oil pressure just to see what that is upon first startup, and make sure that I actually have oil pressure, because this is what killed the last 2 engines I've had in this thing, is no oil pressure. Rods are through blocks, bearings seizing up, that kind of thing. I'm stalling again. Let's fire this thing up. I'm gonna set you up on tripod and cross your fingers with me, because I don't need it. Alright, ignition is on. Everything is well away from pulleys, stuff like that. Let's start this log. And we're recording. Let it get oil pressure up. Well, that was fast. And a lot of smoke. Go away, smoke. Oh yeah, it's burning up some stuff. I forgot that I sprayed all the cylinders down with deep creep. Let's turn that fan on real quick. Test fire. Okay, it may be a little bit loud due to the fan, but I'm gonna do this in real time because I haven't looked at it yet. So starting right here, our oil pressure is, I'll highlight it. Here we go, this is oil pressure, 11 kPa. I'm gonna figure out how to change that to PSI, but so right down here at this first zigzag right here is where it starts up, and it starts to stall out a little bit and then picks itself back up and idles correctly. I'm sorry if I'm shaking, I'm like super sick here. But 11 kPa at 0 RPM, that's normal, I guess. Now it's starting to pick up, starting, stalling out. Now we're starting to get some data, 353 kPa. We'll see what it does when it evens out. Okay, so it's evening out at 360 kPa, 366. So let's check and see what our unit conversion says about that. kPa 366 is 53 psi. I got 50 psi at idle. I'm happy with that, and it was fast. It was quite instant. This is why I fill oil filters. For anybody who commented on my thing on Facebook and was like, oh, you know how to fill up filters. This is why I do it. Well, I am super happy with how that went. Of course, I haven't had it running longer than like 15 seconds. I don't want to go, you know, overheating any heads or anything like that because there's no coolant in it. Whatever. But it's a good start. It had oil pressure in like less than 2 seconds. Full oil pressure, 50 psi at idle. I'm perfectly happy with that. Of course, I don't know what it's going to be like hot. I don't know what it's going to be like driving down the road. I don't know what it's going to be like at wide open throttle. But it's a good start, and it's not discouraging right off the bat. So that's sick. And I'm actually glad that it records oil pressure, because I had no idea if it was going to do that or not. This was kind of a workaround that I learned from Ryan Blazer on an 821 Bravo on YouTube. And he used a couple different pinouts than I did, just like a 5-volt reference and a ground and a power or something like that. I can't remember exactly which it was anyway. It's a 3-wire system anyway. So I actually did do a video on that before, a couple, probably 10 videos ago now, but I actually did do a video on it. So if you want to log your oil pressure like this with a Gen 3 red blue PCM, this is the way to do it. And I'll link that video in the description the next time that I remember to. But yeah, it's moving. It runs. It went vroom and fired up really, really well. It sounded really strong. Made a bunch of smoke right off the bat because just to be sure that like the rings were good and stuff, about 3 weeks ago, I just filled the spark plug holes and the cylinders full of like deep creep. And I even poured a little bit of sea foam down there just to, I don't know, man. If it had a stuck ring, maybe over the last 2 weeks, soaking it would have helped loosen it up a little bit. Or if there was a little bit of rust in the cylinders, would loosen that up and kind of fire that off really quick. So that's why there was that immediate big puff of white smoke that came out. That was the sea foam and stuff burning off there. So I'm sure it didn't do any damage. It didn't knock and throw a rod out through from hydro lock. I didn't spray very much in, but yeah. Oh, I'm excited. Now, although this is a massive, massive milestone, I've got a lot of work ahead of me, obviously. Like, look at this thing. It doesn't look very complete. But as temporary as this wiring setup was, like with this switch here and stuff like that, it didn't set me back very much, probably an hour's work just to tie them in there. And I didn't go crimping connectors that I have to go and uncrimp now, anything like that. I just ran a switch to the ignition so I could fire it up. So what I have to do, really, is just tidy away this here, which when that's down out of the way, it looks fine anyway. I just made my air intake temp sensor wire longer than it needs to be, just in case I need to put it down near the intercooler or whatever. So that's all that's messing that up. And plus I got some extra grounds here that look kind of untidy. But as soon as this PCM is mounted, wherever it's going to be mounted, then I can work on actually finalizing all the wiring, because the PCM and all the output wiring, which is this stuff right here, you know, OBD2 serial, vehicle speed sensor output, all that stuff. When I go to wire that, I don't want to have a bunch of wires that are way too long or not quite long enough. So I want to have everything hard mounted and then I can wire it. And that's going to be in the next video. I'm going to stop this one here because it's getting quite long now. Maybe not as long as some of my other videos, but I'm really, really happy with where I am today. And I just kind of want to let this one sit for a couple days and then I can go back to getting some more wiring progress, get back to the boring stuff. Because it's been a while since I did something exciting, like fire up an engine. Whew, man. So before I go, I just want to say, and I'm sure everybody's sick and tired of hearing me say it, but thanks so much to everybody who has made this possible time and time again. You guys are all amazing. Anybody who's supported the Patreon, anybody who sent me parts, just helped out with information is a big one too, because I obviously don't know everything. I know enough to get in trouble. And anybody who has lent a hand with wiring diagrams, with wiring stuff up, this sloppy trans brake thing, parts, like all my fuse block stuff. It's all, I appreciate all of it. I wouldn't be able to do any of it without you guys. And the car community is quite an awesome bunch. So if you'd like to help support the channel, or if you've got something that you think I could use or something like that, give me a heads up. Let me know. I appreciate it. You can check out the Patreon at patreon.com/stationroadratrods, and I'll have a link of that in the description. And thanks for watching. Have a great day, everybody.